Welcome to the first real video on the building of an effective cold mail. You've been through the introduction, you've been through the best practices, you've understood the examples that I would be using to build a cold mail. Today we are going to be talking about the very first and the most important part of the cold mail, which is the subject line. Most people don't seem to understand the importance of that subject line. What we don't understand, what we don't realize, it's our first point of elimination. When a person opens his or her mailbox, the first thing that they get to see is the subject line, and if that subject line is not interesting enough, if it is not relevant enough to that person, usually that mail hits the recycle bin. It gets deleted straight away. In a crowded mailbox where he or she is looking at a huge list of mails, if the subject line does not stand out, create curiosity and interest, the person will not be inclined to open it. Not only that, the person may in fact delete it. So the subject line's clear objective is to ensure that the mail is opened. Before I start the actual build-up of the subject line, I would like to spend just a minute or two on the typical mistakes we make when we send out cold mails, especially with the subject line. We make the subject line very salesy. We start selling in the subject line itself. Now, if the person in a crowded mailbox sees a subject line which he knows is nothing but a sales mail, even though the product that's on offer could be of immense importance for him, the person will be inclined to discard it. So you are giving the game away straight off by making your subject line a kind of a sales pitch. Avoid that. Second, we make it very clear what the objective of the mail is. When we have the entire mail to give the reason, rationale for the person to give you time, open that mail, why should we put all of that in the subject line? So avoid these two mistakes, which are very evident that these are mails which are sales mails. If the person gets a whiff that this is a sales mail, it will be deleted, it will be discarded, or it may not be opened at all, kept for some other time, by which time it gets lost in the crowd. Okay, having said that, having understood what not to do, let us now move on to see what is it that we should do using those same three examples that I had explained to you in my last video. Let's start with the first example about video recruitment companies. Remember, we are talking about overseas companies already in operation, providing video recruitment solutions, and the objective is to bring them to India or entice them, convince them to open shop in India and use me as their head of operations to help them set it up and manage the show. That is being the objective. The target person is the CEO. Now, I need to create a subject line which is of interest. More important, it should have the curiosity factor. So I considered a few options. Come to India, growth market, high potential for revenues, because they're already on high growth mode. So, how is it that I can entice them with our economic economic information on our economy and all of that. So I considered a few such options, but I felt that I was falling prey to the same things that I'm advising you not to do, which is making it a salesy subject line, giving away the objective of the mail. So I decided to get bold. I said, let me use something that would most definitely create the curiosity factor. So I used XYZ company in India, that means your company, whatever your company's name is, in India. What would this subject line give? What impression would it give that CEO when he or she reads this subject line? What is my company doing in India? What do I have to do with this? What am I doing in India? Can you imagine the kind of interest, curiosity, and the pull that this particular subject line would have had on the reader? So it was a bold statement, but basically to tell that person, listen, open the mail, right? So for me, this subject line did three things. It definitely kindled curiosity, purely because the guy would want to know what is my company doing in India. Second, it gave him an indication of the market. Oh, this is about India. So this is about the Indian market. There must be something in the mail that could have some interest for me about India for this particular company of mine. So, the curiosity factor, the interest factor, the knowledge that this is something about some territory, some market, some new business opportunity was all there in this particular subject line. So I used this particular subject line to send out that cold mail. So let's look at the second option, which is about the cybersecurity services company based out of Canada. My mandate being that I needed to get them to create a presence in the US and Canadian markets. This was a startup specifically focused in the area of privileged access management, a highly difficult to get skill, and also addressing a highly vulnerable threat vector within enterprises because of not very good practices and processes followed by the information security teams. So the idea was to create that curiosity to be able to make the chief information security officer, who was the target person, to actually open the mail. So here I used two options. The first option was basically asking a question: do you have a secure practice? Knowing fully well that they know they don't have a secure practice, they don't have a good compliant practice. Their practice built around privileged access credentials is not something which is compliant with audit requirements. Knowing all that, I used this particular subject line because this would force the security officer to open the mail to understand if I am being asked this question. Obviously, there is some answer lying in that mail. Maybe the person who's written this mail to me would be able to give me some insights. The second option that I used was just to mention about a very unique cybersecurity skill, which is basically a Guardian certification from CyberArk. CyberArk is the world's #1 in cybersecurity solutions, especially in the area of privileged access management. Guardian skills, there are only about 100 odd skills across the world. There are very few people who are certified in it. This client of mine, this startup providing this particular service, had a few of those skills within their organization. Most enterprises do not have this particular skill. So by simply mentioning Guardian skills in the subject line, I am throwing open many questions in the security officer's mind. A, do they have these skills? Could be that they are trying to tell me that they can train my people on these skills. It could be anything. But it is a skill that the security officer, information security officer, is aware of, knows the rarity of that skill, the importance of that skill for that particular practice of privileged access management, therefore would be curious enough to open the mail. These were the logic and rationale that I used for both these options as subject lines for this particular example of a cybersecurity service provider in Canada. The third option is about me offering my services as a mentor to startup accelerators. As I mentioned, what is a startup accelerator? The startup accelerator are hubs that provide all the building blocks for the startups to help them with their growth process, help them with the build up and growth process. They offer office space, they offer mentors, they offer training, testing kits, all of that would help to move the startup to the next level. Now, their biggest requirement is for good mentors who can help them deliver on their promise to those startups, which is give them all those building blocks. Obviously, the target persons are CEO. The CEO will be looking to see that whatever is being offered would actually build value for that particular startup or those set of startups and would help put them on the growth path. That is the CEO's objective. The program manager is looking for someone who would make his job as an operations person easier to be able to deliver on those promises on the ground. So when I started building my cold mail for these people, for these startups, accelerators, I first used the option 1, where I'm letting them know that somebody is introducing a startup mentor. Now, this is definitely to create curiosity, because anybody looking at this mail, and especially in the startup accelerator business, looking for good mentors would look at it and say, who is this person being introduced? Somebody is being introduced. Some mentor is being introduced. So anybody being introduced is a welcome situation, because it hopefully is coming from a known space. So that was that is why I used this particular subject line to make them open the mail, to give them that curiosity. Obviously, it is me, I'm going to be talking about myself, but this was to make them open the mail. The second is about practice. What to do, how to do. Here I'm trying to position my USP. My USP is that I am not a person coming to the table with experience that is of 30 years vintage, 20 years vintage. My experience is current. I mentor startups today. I go on sales calls today. I understand current customer expectations. Now, that is the USP I want to bring to the table. So therefore, my ability to go beyond what to do and hold the startups' hands to show them how to do it is what I bring to the table, is what I want to build value for. So therefore, I use this not only to sell my USP, but also to build that curiosity in the CEO or the program manager to know what could be the difference between what to do and how to do. Who is this person who knows how to do? So I use these options specifically for me to be able to create interest, create curiosity, and the motivation to open that mail in that crowded mailbox. It should stand out in a crowded mailbox. Any of the options that I mentioned for any of the examples would stand out in a crowded mailbox. So all these examples and the subject lines that I've used did all of that for me. I hope you found this session interesting. I hope you were able to understand the kind of rationale and logic you need to use to be able to build a relevant subject line. How is it that you use data that you gathered about your prospects even to build that subject line? Because we know that this is the first point of elimination and we need to make this as effective as possible. Similarly, I will use the same examples to build the next part of the cold mail in my next video, which is the introduction paragraph. The subject line helps to open the mail, and the introduction paragraph helps to ensure that the mail is read. It creates the interest for the person to read the entire mail. Stay tuned for my next video, which I shall be posting in the next few days. In the meanwhile, if you have any comments, please post it in the comments box. Also, please subscribe to my channel and become a part of my journey. Until the next time, take it easy and wish you all the very best.